Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome costume designer Jennifer L. Bryan, who joins us to talk about their work on season 1 of Pluribus. Jennifer will talk us through the creative decisions made to create the costumes for the show. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Rob. How are we?
We are good. We are good. I'm excited to sit down and talk to you about Pluribus, which came out
Yes.
at the tail end of last year. Um,
Yes.
I think before we jump into all of it, just want to say thank you to Kat and her team for organising all of this. So
Great.
big shout
Yes.
out to Kat. I'm sure it's not been easy to be dealing with me. So um, yeah, we'll go from there. How have you found the reception to the program?
Oh, fantastic. You know, much more global and wider, really, than I thought. That was a surprise for me, a good one.
Yeah, I think I guess when it gets stuff like when you're on a streaming service compared to something like Netflix and Apple, because
Hmm.
Apple is like basically the baby on the block, really, with what they're doing and how they're sort of doing stuff as well. Because I feel like they're doing the lot more. I don't want to say adulty stuff, but it feels like more tailored for the sort of slightly older audiences rather than.
Yes. Yeah. I would say definitely more sophisticated and definitely a creative. Like how HBO used to be when they were the babies on the block, or the creators really of this new form of media. And I am really happy to see that Purpose landed where it landed on Apple TV, because I think that audience is there, that sophistication, that one of the unique things I think about the show is it's one of the few shows that forces the audience to stretch their imagination as opposed to having everything visually handed to them.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like when you're watching it, because you're following the characters and what's going on, you're not ahead of them. And if anything, you might get a little bit lost as well with certain cliffhangers, and you think, I have no idea what's going on, but I need to find out.
Yeah, yeah. And it also, I think, also makes the audience, again, in terms of this idea that I have of stretching the imagination. Humans, we all like to solve things. We don't like, hanging chads, don't like things unfinished and or unexplained, because that's just how the brain works. So when people have their viewing and they don't understand the ramifications, for example, or the connection, they create that in their own mind, and it's really fun sometimes to go on to blogs or podcasts, YouTube, to see what the fan-based ones, to see what they're thinking and of what they're thinking of, anticipating of what's coming up in the storyline ahead. Sometimes they are way off base, and then sometimes somebody hits it on the head. Like, I go, oh my gosh, it's almost like they got the upcoming script or episode, and they know that this was going to take place. So I love that it involves the audience on a much deeper, you know, intellectual level.
Yes, and I feel like with like audiences and theories, I think there's so much fun because everybody gets involved, and
Hmm.
it must be kind of scary if you're Vince and you see someone say something, and if he does look at the theories, if somebody does say something, he's like, oh my gosh, they are so close to cracking my idea and thought I have, just like I need to close the laptop and leave before and find
before
out
they
no one's
before
linking
they
it.
blow my cover.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
No, but yeah, um, how did the project come about? Is that something because you've worked with Vince and the team before, first on the last series of
Mhm.
Breaking Bad, and then Better Call Saul? Was it a case of Jennifer, I've got another project. Here's your deal memo. Sign it. Let's get on. Or put whatever
Um,
figure you want on, and let's get on
no,
with
it
it.
was it. I guess there's two ways to look at it. I guess from my long relationship with Vince working, he being the showrunner and creator from Breaking Bad all the way up and the years, which is just amazing because as you know in this industry, that is a rare thing. So I'm blessed and honored um to be part of his creative nucleus. So that was there. But I actually first heard of the project when I was in the UK, when I was working on the Acolyte Star Wars. And one of the producers happened to be in London. We went out for lunch and she goes, da 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 da. And I go, what? And she starts to tell me a little bit about the premise of it, as much as she was allowed to. And, of course, it was almost like a understanding, that Vince, wanted me to design. And I was like, I, it it wasn't connecting with the other projects. So I was kind of like, well, what is this? So so that was sort of like there. And then the next step to basically formalize it was yes, getting that call. We've got this. We want to talk to you about it. And he would say to me, he would say to me, when are you going to be done with that Star Wars thing? So that was an indication to me, like it was like, hey, hurry up and get back. Uh, we've got work to do. So that's kind of how it happened, Yeah.
It's quite funny though. I guess I can imagine as a designer because you're coming into a project that's contemporary, so you have to think about it in such a different way compared to if it's like a sci-fi film or
Yes.
actually this is sci-fi, but in a set in a
In
contemporary
a sense, yeah.
format. Yeah, compared to if you're doing a period drama
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
or like a Star Wars. Um, as a costume designer, where do you begin in your thinking of how everybody's going to be, what their costumes are going to be like, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you like to add your flair to it and also help like create and shape the characters in your design?
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's a very multi-layered question. Okay, so the first thing I would say that happens is, of course, I get either the outline or the script if it's ready for distribution. And then after a quick read, I did have a meeting with Vince at the writer's room up in Burbank, California. And he sat down and, face to face, told me his ideas and his premise, which is really great because those kinds of nuances you're not gonna pick up on just reading the words on a page. You need to have a conversation with the creator and to kind of through that conversation, then you start to form a visual picture in your mind of what he is thinking. And then after I listen to that, as I'm listening to him, I'm also formulating in my mind and questions. So we then begin to have this interchange. And yes, contemporary, yes, a strong sci-fi aspect to it. And he gave me a couple of guidelines. He said that he says, I want the costumes to have a different feeling and reasoning and not to look like anything else that we've seen in that genre of dystopian or disrupted worlds as we know it. So I started viewing, you know, the shows with the zombies, the shows with, you know, I'm the only person left on the planet and I'm living in a underground bunker and I got to protect myself. I watch all shows of, and we know what those are, of that genre, and focusing on costumes. Sometimes some of those projects will have the zombies that are like ooh, 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 and clothes are shredded and all are sunken eyes and their clothes are filthy and emaciated. And I thought, no, that's not where he certainly wants to go. The script is talking for a much higher level of subtlety of change. So I then occurred to me, well, why do they have to markedly look different from the survivors who haven't gotten the thing, that are not the joiners? Carol, Diabate, Manusas, etc. And they still look normal and living in clothing and having ability to change and ornament and whatever, wear whatever they want to wear. The others, which is basically the whole background, which I treated as one character, the idea, and it's subtle. And to your listeners, I would invite them to go back and look at some episodes after they've listened to this conversation, because it's a very subtle thing. What I did, I treated the background, the others, as one character, because they are a hive mind. And then I looked at clothing and what clothing represents to us as individual when we have freedom of choice. Well, their freedom of choice is contained to one emotion, which is happiness, which never shifts from that sphere. So there's no need for them to dress up to feel good that day or put something on because they really don't care. It's basically almost as if you're dressing one individual times 67 million or whatever is on the planet minus 13 people, right? So therefore, I made the approach. I went, they don't have to message to anyone else through clothing, which is what we do every day, their status, their culture, their geographical location, their particular style, how they adorn, how they accessorize. They don't need to do that, because it's boiled down to clothing now is simply a shell, a covering, totally utilitarian. So you don't need to dress it up. And if you put on one item, it doesn't have to coordinate with the other, or it doesn't have to be from the same culture. So a lot of times say, you could put on a grass skirt with a morning coat top, whatever, because at that point, there it's one. So there's no need for demarcation in clothing. So when you go back to your audience and they go back and look at the show, they'll see um, it looks okay, but with the others, you start to see some mismatches or some unusual combination of clothing that normally you would not have chosen. It would have been more coordinated. And of course, no jewelry, no obvious adornment, because it's not necessary. You don't need to signal to anyone your status or the fact that you like Swarovski or pearls or whatever. There's no need. There's no need to send those signals, because it's one entity. So
Mm.
that was a new challenge to do in my craft. And then on the flip side of that, I was able to create very tasteful and culture driven, the actual opposite, and ethnically driven and style driven of the 13, because they came from different parts of the world, that is still intact to them. So that's how, from a costume designer's aspect, I made that difference between the others and the 13.
There's a lot to sort of digest from your answer, and I think it's a very interesting point that, like, you may have the 13, I feel like we should nickname them the Fellowship or something, just so that
Yes.
distinguish distinguish.
Yes.
But
Every time I never know quite what to call them, you know,
I
the
guess
none others, the non joiners.
yeah, non-joiners. They sound like something called wood shop, woodwork shop thing, non-joiners. Um, it's when you have the let's call it a hive mind. When you have all of them, as you said, like this, then it is such a subtle things like that. They're not, they don't really care what they're going to be wearing.
Exactly. They
It's
don't
just
need to care.
yeah, and it's just such a very subtle way. It's like the doctor is actually the DHL. Is it a DHL guy still in that
Yeah.
outfit and in the DHL outfit, and it's like
Yeah. And he's in that DHL, or that guy is in the DHL outfit because at the moment that he joined, that was his occupation. So you will see some things like uniforms, like the two girls from TGI Fridays, perfect example in their TGI Friday, which are authentic, by the way. Um, Uniforms, hostess outfits, and they're flying this. I don't know what it was, 737, whatever. They're flying this major airplane, and they still got their name badge on and their little white blouses. So that hive mind is in that moment that you became part of that hive mind. Whatever you were wearing in that day when it happened to you, because it happens over time, right? You're in your regular stuff. Then of course time passes, you have to change, and that's when you start to see people in unorthodox combinations, things that are just like, it looks okay, but it's a little off. Yeah.
yeah, and I think you could probably have so much fun with that as well, not just yourself, but also people who are going to be on set, um, the
Yes,
the, s-
we
the
did.
standbys who would just be like, do you know what? Let's mess this about a little bit. Actually, maybe his collar, maybe half of it is up and the other half it isn't
Yes,
because
yes,
no one, no one's gonna. They don't know what a collar
exactly.
is.
Exactly. Or one of the things I had to do, though, I really had to really, myself and my onset costumers, more than me, we had to police the background to make sure that they didn't have, you couldn't see the outline of their cell phones in their back pockets, or somebody didn't slip an earring on or forgot to take their watch off. So we were very vigilant about that. So I hope we didn't miss anybody having those, modern conveniences, because you don't need a cell phone. You can just, one mind to
Yeah, exactly.
communicate.
Think about how much money you save on the cell phone bill,
Hmm.
um, with all of that. But even stuff like that, where I'm sure somebody might spot it eventually or somehow by seeing the cell phone things, or even the earrings. And it's funny because as an average audience member, it's like I wouldn't have really thought about that sort of a design point, about the earrings or
Hmm.
even a ring or jewelry, where
Yes.
you're talking about people's statuses. And I think we kind of, with the sort of fellowship, you can kind of tell certain people sort of just gone back with their lives as normal, and
Hmm.
then, or if they're fighting it like Cowra is, but then you have the Diabate and
Hmm.
his outlandish costumes, and he's basically just living a fantasy. And
Yes.
when we're introduced to him, in Air Force One, which is a great visual gag, to then having his episode in episode 6 where he's basically living out a Bond fantasy.
Yes.
Um, it's just so funny to see, and it's so clever. But then also, as a designer, you must think, okay, cool. Now we can have a bit more fun in
Yes, I
playing
did.
with people's statuses.
Yes,
And
I did. I loved when a fantasy came around, we've got, yeah, you've got Diabates fantasy, yes, and then you also have Cusimayos. So to do the whole Peruvian village and to put all that color back in, because what happens there is that they just as it happens with Diabates Casino Royale Vegas Rat Pack Fantasy, They create this ideal world for what they want you to think life is going to be if you join. Hey, little girl, you want some candy? You're going to get more of this. It's like a bait. And for Diabate, I mean, what a bait that's handed to him. And he absolutely, you know, relishes it. But we also know that as an adult versus Kuzumaya, who's a little bit, she's younger and she may not have the world experience that Diabate has. Diabate knows, he does know when he has a conversation with Carol in the penthouse, which for the viewers, that actually we did actually get to shoot in Elvis Presley's penthouse. That's real because Diabate wanted that, so he got that. Is that when he explains to her the stem cells and that he politely declined, he realizes that there are consequences and compromises in joining. But in the meantime, I think he's going to milk them for everything he's got. Whereas Cosimayo, being a young girl, and this is just my take on it, not being as worldly, exposed, thinks that she'll have her baby goat and she'll have a farm and everything will be happy. And then this it's such a sad little part when she joins and she just opens the gate fence and walks away, like, and the poor little goat is like running after her because now she has no connection to that. And to design those two fantasy scenarios was really thrilling for me because I got to do something that played into the global nature of the show. Peruvian community did a lot of research on that, very thorough. And then on the other side, Diabate, his flashiness actually comes from his part of the world. I was inspired by the sappers in Brazzaville in the Congo who spend all of their hard-earned money on clothes, like a modern day dandy. And that was my inspiration for putting that within Diabate's fantasy. So it comes from that part of the world, Africa, that he's from, and then also being able to represent what Kuzimayo's world is, a high Peruvian, in the Peruvian mountains, a small village.
I think as well, like you can mentioning as well about life experiences and how much you can play with people's life experiences. Because as you said, Diabate was something that he knows that he's going to milk them for all he can, but
Hmm.
at the same time, it's probably the first time he what's the word? It's like maybe some of it that he's experiencing. So like being being part of the hive, it's kind of like on the outskirts of the hive mind, but it's just what I just live out my fantasies and
Yeah,
do
maybe
everything
he,
I
maybe
can.
he, maybe he could be a guy that, I mean, the writers would know better than I would, but perhaps you kind of feel that he's trying to find that sweet spot where he can stay on the fringes of it and just have them keep them on the hook. Like, okay, if I gave you Air Force One and I gave you that experience, then I gave you Vegas in its heyday, and you got that amazing, which was fantastic for me to design, by the way, because every piece of jewelry that I couldn't use before, I slapped it on everyone. It was great. And maybe that's what he's doing because he doesn't seem as 100% committed to having things return to normalcy as Carol and Manusis do. He looks like he could be a swing vote if a vote went down.
It's just funny, isn't it? Just like how we're talking about people and how their sort of choices and decisions in the show through their costumes and how much you've added to their sort of lifestyle and like their sort of thinking. I
Mm-hmm.
think with like Diabate, it's yeah, it just feels like it's just funny to sort of think about it, and you're thinking with like, yeah, it is funny that he's doing this. It's all sort of really big and like grand, and we all kind of have a good time watching him. But actually, as you said, he could be the guy who swing votes it. And it's like, you know what? I've had all my fun. I might as well join and see what
Yeah.
goes on.
Yeah. I mean,
Whilst
yeah, that's the thought. What if you constantly got what you wished for? You had a genie lamp that's more than three wishes. Is he going to, I mean, this is a season two question people might ask. Is he going to run out of fantasies? Is there a point where you get everything you want, and when that happens, what's next for you? What's your motivation? You know, is there anything to strive for? That's why I think Pluribus is such a mind bending show, because it, especially in today's world, and we see freedoms being reshaped, I think, in the modern world, and things that are happening that are, I think, most of us in our lifetime, never thought, these certain types of constraints that seem to be approaching. I think it really, really parallels in a way with Pluribus. And I really believe that is one of the things that magnetizes people to the show. They see a thing that could be a reality.
you're kind of opening my eyes even more now with the show and just the sort of thinking behind it. I think it's
Hmm.
very, as you said, I try to sort of like my mind's trying to race ahead of my mouth so I can manage to get out some of the
Hmm.
answers. But even going back to the Kusamayu and like their setup and how it's just you think that they're going to be back to normal. They'll be like they live their life as with the goats and whatnot. Then with somebody like Diabate, where it's just like no, we're gonna. It feels like it's like the complete other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
But then also you mentioning, like, what happens when the fantasies run out? What are you going to do then? Um, are you going to be okay? Are you not going to be okay? What even
Hmm.
happens to somebody's like psyche as well? Because like, it just doesn't become real life. I guess it's like another thing where it's just it's like gluttony, right? Like, just like
Yes.
if you could, I don't know, like drink,
Gluttony. Yes. What
yeah,
if you? Yeah. What do you do when you get all the excesses that you want? What happens? Because what I never thought about before, Rob, is, well, I think I have the answers as I'm pondering it, is that the others are in just one status of happiness. So they're the emotions that we have as normal human beings to strive, to achieve, you know, nose to the grindstone, the elbow grease, all the things that in the modern world we are conditioned for, that these are the ingredients for the recipe of success. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, or every single culture has a variation of that success as an individual. But when the others don't have that, that's been taken away from them, which is also a freedom that's removed. One could say, well, I don't have to worry about being successful because I am as successful as every other person on the globe, except for these 13, the non joiners. And it's just, I mean, being part of the show and knowing the scripts and knowing the stories, even myself as a creative on the show, I do ask those questions as Jennifer. And I don't have answers, which is what makes it interesting.
I guess as well, you like as creatives, you can discuss it more in creative sense and visual sense,
Yes.
and then also the fact that somebody can spark something within each other, uh, yeah, within each other, because you might have one idea of how something should work out.
Mm-hmm.
For example, no jewelry, and then somebody could be like, "Do you know what? I never thought about that." Or somebody says that they are as a one hive mind, they are all sort of just connected as one thing. So there's no such thing as status. But then you think, oh, okay, Doctor DHL outfit, perfect, and so things like that. Or even you have someone who it might be sort of like somebody who's like with loads of tattoos, but they're in scrubs.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, there probably are people with medical preservation who have
Yeah.
tattoos, but like
Yeah, we
so,
did tattoos. We
but the
also did,
connotations of it.
yeah, we also did a I think th- this kid must have been about 14 years old. And if you remember in the hospital when where Zosha is and Carol comes there because now she's like on a mission to kind of find out whatever she can about um about the others and the system and everything. There's a scene where this kid rolls by and he is pushing a cardiac crash cart. He's 14, but he's going to go fix somebody who's into cardiac arrest because also with the others, intellect just happens. It doesn't start after you graduated college, you know? Um, it's really cool, really cool.
And I guess it also subverts like expectations of like what this world is and what people are going to be doing.
Yes.
And again, it's just very just smart. It's also very simple as well because it just sort of sets up with being like, oh, actually, this kid will be doing something because they're all as one hive mind. No one's going to
Mm-hmm.
say anything about them. And again, with like costume wise, do you because there's a lot of time jumps. I say time jumps, but there's
Yeah.
time hopping within the show,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of sometimes months and days. And as a designer, are you thinking of like if the hive mind are already as one, what happens to their clothes? Is it just going to be constantly dirty and they're just going to get worse and worse as the series goes on? Or do you think of it in a different sort of manner that they will change eventually?
Well, it will because and right now in season one, you don't see much degradation because remember, they're at the start of this joining. So everything on the planet, every t shirt, every piece of clothing is available to them, as is food that's already made and processed. Food will, you run out of, think about this, even in our normal lives. You run out of food faster than you run out of clothing. So you're buying food every week for your family, some type of grocery, but you're not doing that with your clothes. You're not buying clothes every week. So clothes will last longer. But what you've done, if you remember the scene where Zosha takes Carol to this big gym-like space where many hive people, they basically are living together because they don't need individual homes. Remember, they all pulled out of Albuquerque. And so she takes them to where they all are. And in this huge gymnasium, you see huge bins of clothing. So what they would do, they would just go to the bin, pull something out, whatever their hand grabbed, and a top, a bottom of something, some garment, and that's what they would wear in this present state. But eventually, like food, but at a much slower pace, their supply of clothing that already exists is going to be exhausted. and then they'll be left with what they have. And I think going into season two, now mind you, I haven't had scripts yet or anything, but I'm just thinking just natural progression of how clothes deteriorate, how long they last, how how they deteriorate. I think in time, if you start to run out of food and you start to run out of human derived protein, then I would think that you would see physical changes in the others in a downward spiral, which would also include clothing. Because the clothing at some point has to begin to age.
That's very true, and also the fact that you never know if something has a hole in it, and then if it's too late, that somebody will it'll rip, or people are
It will
doing certain
yeah, it will
things.
disintegrate over time. So I am looking forward to season two to see how Vince envisions that and how I employ it as as a designer. Yeah.
And I
My
guess as
head is
well,
I already have things thinking.
I guess as a creative, you're always going to be thinking about stuff,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and if you know that there might be another series, and you kind of maybe I'll start thinking ahead in what you're designing because it's just a natural thing,
Yes, a
right?
natural thing. Yes.
And also you probably thrive off one another when you're in a creative environment of
Hmm.
sort of thinking like I wouldn't I would say like friendly competition between heads of departments of like, oh look how cool my set is, and it's like, oh my gosh, they did this. It's like, what am I going to do my costume stuff? I know how I'm going to top them.
And I want my costumes to look great in that great set and vice versa. And also that brings to a point of and I know you know this about collaboration between departments. And so in I collaborate closely with production designer and of course also stunts for the obvious reasons. Um, with the production design, it's a very for we collaborate for visual reasons and also for practical reasons. For example, I would want to know what the color theme in the house might be, what the furnishings are going to be. And even when we started building the Peruvian village, we we had meetings, production design, costumes, props, those of us that create physical things that go into a set or on a body. We had meetings about what that village would look like, what the color scape would be. So I'm presenting my research photos, of Peruvian wear. And Denise Bizzini, our amazing production designer, would then show me, furnishings in a typical hut, for example, or what the outside, the fencing, the farmyard, the gate, what that would be constructed. And then Mike Hansen, again, incredible property master who's been with Vince from the beginning, will then show me props. And then each of us would feed off of each other's contribution because it has to have a synergy that those things look like they belong in the same environment. So that's also an advantage, I would say, for being on a show with creatives and a showrunner that we've worked for so many years, but each show basically has been different. And of course, Pluribus being the most different. I mean, totally severed. What it really has in common with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, obviously, is the location of New Mexico. But outside of that, it's a different story. So although we've all been working together for years, we had to redial our mindset to something to a different direction. Also we shot overseas. We shot in Spain and the Canary Islands. We replicated Morocco. And for me, I, research on Middle Eastern clothing. And so it just took me, even though it's based in New Mexico, design wise, it really took me all over the world.
And I think that's also like something that, like as a designer, not being sort of pigeonholed in that same area and being allowed to sort of just be intercontinental with
Hmm.
people's designs and ideas and what other cultures have as well. And like you mentioned it earlier with Peruvian, talking about with Denise about production design, with how the huts out there, but then also mentioning the colors that you want to bring into it. And again, the discussions that you say, like if we're going to use a red, what are you going to
Yes.
use on the walls there? And it's like, well, we're not going to use a red. So you think, okay, we're in the clear here. We can go ahead with what we want to design, but then also you don't want the colors to clash, and
Yes.
with production design. But I guess with cinematography as well, they need to know
Yes.
the color tests because that on a
Yes.
like whatever you pick as a swatch, oh that looks incredible. Put it in front of a camera. Oh dear, that does not look like how we
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah, true. Yes, we do. We do camera tests from time to time on things that we're not sure how it's going to reproduce on camera, and like in the Peruvian village, for example, one of the colors that is very prevalent in Peruvian clothing is green, a very hot fuchsia pink, and I would talk to Adam or DP about, okay, is this green okay for if there's anything going to be green screen, for example? So I always, again, another collaborative department is I also have to be aware of how they're going to shoot things. Is it going to be manipulated? Is it going to be, are they going to throw some CGI in there? Or all of these different things, blue screen, green screen, and for listeners, when if you're using a blue screen, then I can't have that spectrum in the garment that the actor is wearing, or else it would look like a part of their body is missing. So those those kinds of things, and also with green screen. So I have to be very conscious and knowing when those cinematic methods are going to be utilized.
I'm just picturing like the idea of like, yeah, we're ready to shoot, and someone's like, why is there a hint of blue? Where's the hand gone? Where's the arm gone? Yeah, something like that would be quite.
Yeah.
It would
Well,
it's
they
obviously
would
not funny at the
catch it.
time,
They would
but
catch it before it. They would catch it in post. But making corrections like that are very expensive, and I certainly wouldn't want to be the cause of it.
oh no, 100% not. Like,
Mm.
that wouldn't go down very well
No, it
with
wouldn't.
people. And I would definitely would not like to be in the room if an exec sees that,
Mm-mm.
and they're like, oh, by the way, you're like, oh. But again, I guess like when you're talking about certain colors as well, like because like with Vince, there's always so much natural light, so it feels like everything feels natural. When
Yes.
everything's shot, it has that natural light, but when it has the colors, that just feel very rich and normal. Sometimes it feels like you're watching, like you could walk around like the sets or costumes. It feels
Mhm.
like if you open your closet or walk around a house, you'd feel the same sort of
In
colors
the
and
same
warmth with
way.
it all.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And you touched on color, and I want to talk about that a little bit. A lot of people in the first episode, when the first episode dropped, were fascinated with Carol's yellow leather jacket. And they asked me, where did I find it? Well, I didn't find it. I made it. I designed it. I sourced the leather. First off, the process of that, before I even dive into the color, was that here's an example of reading the script, listening to, the director's ideas of how they want to shoot something, is that I knew it was going to be at night. I knew that she was going to have a lot of physical things to do. In other words, dragging poor Helen's body off the curb into the back of a pickup truck, push um, a zombied out guy out of the driver's seat, jump into his pickup, and drive it to the hospital and then have to pull the body off or prevent people, I mean, from pulling it off the bed of the truck. She had Ray and of course her stunt people had a lot to do. And Ray did, you can see from the camera angles, quite a bit of it. So I thought, okay, it's going to be at night. Sh- New Mexico nights are cool. She definitely would need a jacket. It has to be sturdy because of all the actions that this jacket is going to take us through. So leather it was. And then I went back again to the idea that it's dark outside the country and western club, outside a hospital, dead of night. Um, Not many lights are on. So we needed our actress to our heroine to pop. So I decided yellow. Now, some people, some viewers thought that the yellow was a callback to Breaking Bad and the lab suits, but in actuality, it wasn't. I used yellow because I needed her to glow in that dark nighttime environment. That she wasn't going to be singularly lit very brightly. So I needed the garment to help with that. And then yellow does that. Yellow does it's a very high vis color in dark environments. The other thing subconsciously of my color choice is that yellow is a color of caution. Your brain associates red with danger, yellow or amber with caution, and green with, we use the phrase green lit, all's clear. And so I chose that color because the environment had suddenly changed. There are a lot of questions. What's happening? So I chose yellow. And there was an added bonus to it that I didn't know I was going to get. Um, when marketing started to package Pluribus together, they loved that color so much that it inspired them to make it the color of the poster of that yellow. It came from a costume. The inspiration came from a costume. I was just like, I was over the moon when I was told that. Um, yeah, because that's I don't know if that's ever happened before. So that was cool.
That's a very sort of like brush the
Yeah.
shoulder, sort of like if they've used that color for the poster. And again, it shows how important color plays and the sort of
Yes.
thoughts going in. As it's saying, oh, if they're going to be outside at night in New Mexico, they're going to need a jacket because it's so
Hmm.
cold. And if they're
Hmm.
going to be doing, how can what can I think of what's going to make it? Oh, weary. Oh, that's it. I know exactly what we'll do. It's going to be it'll be a yellow, and then people can do the dots if they want regarding
Hmm.
the what's it called, callbacks to Breaking Bad and whatnot. Um, I've got one final question, Jennifer,
Hmm.
and it might be difficult because it's like choosing your favorite child. But what was your favorite costume to design?
Wow. I would say, I would say maybe. Oh my, that is such a tough question. Yes, it is asking me like, what's my favorite child? I have favorites for different reasons, if you allow me that. Um, Diabate's jacket, the tuxedo, was a favorite because I knew I was drawing from it from a real place. The leather jacket became a favorite when I realized, when I started looking at dailies, how iconic it looked like it could be. So those are two. I also, oh my gosh, oh boy. I also loved doing Zosha's blue gown, that beautiful blue gown that she wears on Air Force One. I loved it. I loved it for the sensuality of it, because there weren't many um, opportunities to do that, due to the nature of the show. So yeah, so every one of them gave me, all of my favorites gave me um, a platform for them to get that assignation for different reasons. So yeah, I'm going to give you more than one favorite.
No, I'll take that because it's always a difficult question. It's also a question I like asking because I guess it's always a moment where somebody might have something that's really they love, or there might be
Hmm.
something else that they love, and I bet you probably changes from day to day every time somebody asks that question. And but then also they are sort of choices that you've gone for,
Yes.
um, and yeah, I hate putting you on the spot like that, but I
You
think you gave a
did.
good answer.
Oh.
Um, but Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rob.
It
It's
was nice
been,
seeing. It was good seeing you again.
yes. So you're going to have to tell your audience how we know each other.
Well, we're very lucky enough to work together on Star Wars Acolyte, and yeah, we had the lovely Jay looking after you,
Yes.
and I'll make sure to pass your regards on to him as well.
Please
Um,
do.
and I'll make sure of that.
Yes.
Pluribus is streaming now on Apple TV Plus. No, Apple TV even. Sorry, go out
Mhm.
and watch Jennifer and her team's amazing work. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
No, thank you. You take care and yeah, bye bye. And also
Okay.
one more time, thank you, Kat and the team for sorting this out.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.